Ahoy, mateys! Welcome to Podcasts of the Caribbean, a podcast covering the world of Pirates of the Caribbean, from the theme parks to the movies and everything in between. My name is Justin Helmer, and I will be your host on this voyage through the Caribbean. It'd be too late to alter course now, mateys. Hello, and welcome back to Podcasts of the Caribbean. This is episode 63, and today we're covering what's probably the least known Pirates of the Caribbean attraction at the Disney parks, and that is something that was called The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow. This existed at Disney's Hollywood Studios park in Walt Disney World from 2012 to 2014, and unlike most of the other Pirates attractions around the world, this was actually an interactive walk-through attraction instead of a ride. I have fond memories of this attraction because I remember experiencing it back in the day when I was younger. It was super cool to me at the time, and it's an experience that's more tailored towards kids than adults, but I'm super excited to talk about it today. So we're going to do a few things on this episode. First, we're going to go through the development of the attraction, and then the attraction experience itself, and of course the eventual closure of the attraction in 2014. So let's get right into it. Now, before we talk about the creation of this attraction, let's first go back to 2003. And back when Disney's Hollywood Studios was named Disney MGM Studios. Why? Well, I'll give you a hint. It has nothing to do with the release of The Curse of the Black Pearl. Actually, it has to do with the other 2003 release of a theme park attraction-based movie, and that was the Haunted Mansion movie starring Eddie Murphy. Now, the reason I'm bringing this movie up is because the building that the Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow attraction was housed in, which was named Soundstage 4, was used multiple times before for attractions in the same vein. This started with the 2003 attraction, The Making of the Haunted Mansion movie. This attraction was created to promote the movie, of course, and it consisted of a few different things. The main part of the experience was a 15-minute featurette of various clips from the film and behind-the-scenes videos, and after that, guests would enter a little exhibit of different props used in the making of the movie. What kind of sucks about this is that photography was not allowed in the exhibit, so we really don't know what was on display here. And this attraction as a whole was not very well documented, which is probably why it's not remembered by pretty much anyone. All I could find about it were some photos of the outside of the building, an All Ears article explaining the actual experience, and one photo of the ballroom set with the organ from the film. Other than that, we really don't have much information about this. But this attraction was only there to promote the film, so it closed on May 1st, 2004 to make way for the next attraction that would take its place. And this next attraction was to coincide with the release of the 2005 film, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The attraction was called Journey into Narnia, Creating the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and it opened in December of 2005 to coincide with the film's release. This attraction was fairly similar to the Haunted Mansion one that preceded it, as you would go inside the show building and watch a video and see some props from the film. However, this one was really cool as you first entered a room with the iconic wardrobe itself, before walking through it and emerging into another room with snowy trees and the iconic lamppost from the film where Lucy meets Mr. Tumnus. Then a video montage of the film would play, and there was even a brief appearance of a cast member portraying Jadis the Witch above you in the room, which was super cool. But after the video was over, you would then move to another part of the room which contained props from the film, along with costumes and even weapon props like Peter's sword and some other cool stuff. It was apparently a pretty popular attraction as it remained open from December 2005 to January 2008, where it closed to make room for the next attraction, which would actually be very similar to it since it would be promoting the second Narnia film, Prince Caspian. This attraction was called Journey into Narnia, Prince Caspian, which opened in June 2008, and was pretty much the same experience except for the theming and videos shown. The first room was themed to the interior of Aslan's Howl from the film, where a behind-the-scenes video would play before guests entered the second room, which was themed to the actual room where the broken stone table is in the film. The theming was incredible, and a short montage of the film would play, along with some special effects of Jadis the Witch's face through the ice, just like in the movie. But afterward, on the way to the exit, you would walk past props from the film, containing costumes and other neat things like concept art of the characters. But that was it for this second Narnia experience, and this lasted around the same amount of time as the first one, and it remained open until September 2011. The next attraction that would open in this building is, of course, the one that we are going to be focusing on, which is The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow, which opened a year later in December of 2012. Now that we've gotten the history of what came before it, let's talk about how this Pirates of the Caribbean attraction came to be. And thanks to the Pirates of the Caribbean wiki for all the information about the development of this attraction. It has been very, very useful to put this episode together. But the attraction was first announced in the Disney Parks annual pass holder newsletter, which was named the Mickey Monitor, on May 1st, 2012. The article in the newsletter had the title, "You Don't Know Jack Yet." Big shout out to the Pirates of the Caribbean wiki once again, as we actually have a photo of this article from the newsletter. So let's read through what it says. You don't know Jack yet. The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow will immerse guests in a pirate world. Opening this summer at Disney's Hollywood Studios, The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow has elicited something of a legend of its own. The word around the parks is that this mysterious new attraction will be a first-of-its-kind sensory experience in which guests will have the chance to be enveloped by the world of Pirates of the Caribbean as seen in the 4 feature films. Sounds intriguing. To find out more, we had a chance for a friendly parlay with Jason Roberts, Walt Disney Imagineering project manager and show producer for the new attraction. This is going to be an immersive experience, Jason told us. We'll really delve into the story of Captain Jack Sparrow and put our guests in the middle of it in all new, exciting ways. Story is always the most important thing for us at Walt Disney Imagineering, Jason continued. But we're always looking at new ways to tell the story that our guests have never seen before. In this attraction, we'll let you walk in the footsteps of Jack Sparrow. It's not the making of, not behind the scenes, it is really a first-person experience. Jason wouldn't divulge any of the state-of-the-art special effect trickery used in the attraction, but he did assure us that the attraction is certain to elicit a "wow, how'd they do that?" from our guests. A longtime fan of the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction and films, Jason was delighted at his shot to work on the attraction. We worked with the archives as well as the filmmakers while they were shooting the last movie, Jason said. And as a fan, I just loved sitting through those films again and again, going through all the details and leveraging them for this new experience. It's really been a blast. So the big thing from that article showed this attraction was not going to be a behind-the-scenes attraction like the Haunted Mansion and both Narnia attractions before it. It would be an immersive, walk-through sensory attraction that would get people involved in the action. But the actual story of the attraction was left pretty vague in the announcement. So much so that people were thinking the attraction was quietly canceled for a while until Disney outright confirmed it was still in the process of being created. However, the actual story of the attraction consisted of a disembodied talking skull teaching guests how to become proper pirates in order to join Jack Sparrow's crew. A bunch of Imagineers worked on this project, and if you're a Disney fan, you may recognize some of these names. Charita Carter, Laura Mitchell, Jason Roberts, and Jason Sorrell all worked on this attraction to bring it to life. Jason Sorrell you may know from the various books he's written about Disney attractions, specifically the From the Magic Kingdom to the Movies books on Haunted Mansion, and of course the one he did on Pirates of the Caribbean. If you've never owned or read that book, it is seriously one of the best Pirates of the Caribbean books to own if you want to learn about the creation of the original attraction at Disneyland and the making of the first Pirates movie. It is such a good book, I cannot recommend it enough. But the attraction is named The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow, so of course, Captain Jack Sparrow had to be a part of the experience. And what is really interesting and awesome about this attraction is that they actually brought in Johnny Depp himself to portray Jack for scenes in this attraction. This attraction was being developed after the production of On Stranger Tides, so it's one of the rare times that Johnny Depp has portrayed Jack Sparrow in official Disney media outside of the movies. That is a big thing that a lot of people forget. Obviously, Johnny's lended his voice to Jack in the main Pirates of the Caribbean attraction, but outside of that and the movies, he doesn't do much of the smaller scale stuff. This is why most video games and other media requiring Jack Sparrow's voice have been portrayed by Jared Butler. for the one exception of the 2003 video game, which also happens to be called The Legend of Jack Sparrow, funnily enough. Johnny Depp actually recorded lines for Jack in that game, which is really cool. Also, I do think that Johnny Depp recorded the grunts and other sounds Jack Sparrow makes in the Lego Pirates of the Caribbean game, but I'm not entirely sure about that. But yeah, this attraction needed to have Johnny Depp because half the show requires Jack Sparrow's presence. So they filmed Johnny in full costume against a green screen, which would then be projected onto a screen in the finished ride to make it seem like Jack was really there talking to the audience. There is actually a neat behind-the-scenes video of the attraction that shows Johnny Depp recording his scenes and interacting with the Imagineers. So I'll link that in the episode description if you want to watch that. Thanks once again to the Pirates Wiki for archiving that video. But aside from Jack, there was another voice needed for the attraction, and that was for the disembodied talking skull. This skull was actually voiced by James Arnold Taylor, who you may know from voicing Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Clone Wars animated show and other Star Wars media, along with many other awesome voice acting roles. And in addition to both of them, there is one more character that could be seen briefly when Jack Sparrow shows up for the first time in the attraction. This character actually is the redhead from the original attraction. No, not Scarlet from the films. I am talking about an actress dressed in the classic redhead costume from the ride, who slaps Jack Sparrow twice before storming off. The redhead was portrayed by actress Ceres Morgan Moyer, who actually would go on to star in another piece of pirate media, that being the show Our Flag Means Death, where she starred in one episode as the character Victoria Archer. But besides the actors and voiceover from the talking skull, the other part of the attraction was the physical environment the guests would emerge into. The whole room was themed to a pirate's cave, specifically Jack Sparrow's cave, as he says at one point in the attraction. The main feature of this room contained a huge recreation of the bow of the Black Pearl, which was really cool seeing in person. The rest of the cave contained various pirate-themed props and many copies of different items seen in the movies. Some of these props included the glass coffin from On Stranger Tides, which if you don't remember is what they carried Serena the Mermaid in. The flag from the Queen Anne's Revenge could also be found as well, along with a portrait of Cutler Beckett. There was also one of the Aqua de Vida chalices, the dead man's chest, and even the back of the throne Jack sits on from the Isla de Pelagostos. There were a bunch of other props too, and plenty of skeletons that could be found all around the room. The Aqua de Vida chalice was actually in the hand of one of the skeletons, which was pretty neat. But that was the main room, and there was actually one other room in the attraction which was before this. It was essentially the pre-show room. This room contained a door, and above it sat the skull and crossbones, which would come to life and usher guests into the cave. You can really see the similarities between this pre-show room and the pre-show room from the Narnia Prince Caspian attraction if you look close enough. This room in the Narnia attraction was that first opening room in Aslan's Howl, and the door shaping and everything is very similar to how it looks in the Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow attraction. It just has some extra set dressing, but it is very, very similar, and you can definitely see it's the same room just with minimal effort put into it. But construction in Soundstage 4 began in September of 2012, and 1 month later, artwork was shared of what the finished outdoor appearance of the building would look like. The exterior of the building was painted to look like the Malkoon map, along with a large version of the skull from the movie logo, which funnily enough is the trilogy skull with the On Stranger Tides themed bandana, as Jack's piece of 8 is replaced by the charm Jack has in the 4th film. Under the skull, there was signage with the attraction's name, The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow, along with a pole bearing Jack Sparrow's flag. It was super cool in real life, and I remember walking up to it and seeing the Malkoon map on the building and the skull, and it was so cool to see in person, especially as a kid. I loved how awesome it looked. But previews of the attraction then began in late November, and the attraction officially opened on December 6th, 2012. So now that we've covered the development of the attraction, let's go experience it for ourselves. Imagine you're back in Disney's Hollywood Studios at the end of 2012, and you're waiting in line for this attraction. We enter inside the building, and we wait at the door. You look up at the skull and crossbones, and then suddenly the skull comes to life and begins to talk to us. It begins by saying, "You come seeking adventure and salty old pirates, eh? You've come to the proper place." That dialogue, of course, is directly from the original ride, which is super, super cool. But the skull continues and asks if the guests are here to find the legendary Captain Jack Sparrow, and it tells them that only true pirates are fit to sail with Jack. The skull then asks everyone if they have what it takes to join Jack's crew, and asks them all to shout "I." After that, the doors under the skull open, and it beckons the guests inside. It also says the iconic "Dead Men Tell No Tales" line before you enter in. And even once you go into the cave room, it actually does have the original audio of the line "Dead Men Tell No Tales" that plays too, which is awesome. But all the guests then emerge into the cave, with the bow of the Black Pearl sitting in front of you. The whole background behind it is a projection screen which shows the sky and waves crashing against the rocks of the cave. But suddenly, everything goes dark and the sky becomes stormy, and the skull from before materializes in the sky on the screen at the back of the room. So the first part of the attraction is split into a few trials, as they're called, and the first one happens immediately, as a whole skeleton crew emerges all around the cave. They walk up the cave wall on the screen at the back, and their shadows can also be seen all around the cave wherever you look, which is super cool. The projection mapping in this attraction was insanely good for its time. Disney's only gotten better at it, but even back in 2012, all these effects looked so good. But the disembodied skull returns and says there's only one way to defeat a skeleton crew, and that is with the skeleton key. During this part of the show, a cast member will choose someone from the audience, usually a kid, and they'll give them the skeleton key prop. The skull will then ask whoever has the key to yell "I" and raise it up so everyone can see it. This kid will usually be taken to an area behind the audience at the back of the room where they can stand on something so they're a bit higher than everyone else, and the skull orders everyone to say, "Send those bones to Davy Jones." And after that, the magic of the skeleton key will activate the cursed chest on the right of the Black Pearl, and all the skeletons around the room disappear. The skull will then congratulate everyone, and the next trial involves the Flying Dutchman. The Dutchman then shoots up from the water on the screen at the back of the room, and Davy Jones' voice can be heard calling for the Kraken. Now, this is no disrespect to the voice actor who did this Davy Jones dialogue in this attraction, but it is rough. It is far too high-pitched and doesn't really sound like Bill Nye at all, but the Kraken will then shoot up across the screen, wrapping its tentacles around, and the maw of the Kraken shows up on the right side of the screen. The skull then tells everyone to roar back at the Kraken, which apparently scares it off and makes it disappear beneath the waves. The skull then congratulates everyone before the next trial begins, which involves a mermaid. A mermaid appears on the dark area of the Black Pearl, which is used as a secondary smaller screen, and she begins to start singing "My Jolly Sailor Bold." The skull then tells everyone to cover their ears to avoid the siren song, and the whole room is swallowed by water. This projection is probably the coolest in the entire attraction, as the entire cave becomes submerged in water. It is so well done, and it really feels like you're actually underwater. Like, they did an incredible job on this effect. But the skull then orders everyone to stomp loudly to drown out the mermaid's singing, and this eventually works and makes the mermaid scream before she disappears. All the water around the room goes away, and the skull returns to congratulate everyone again. But after this, the Flying Dutchman returns, and it begins to fire at the guests. The skull then tells everyone to raise their fist in the air and yell "Arr!" before the skull introduces the one, the only, Captain Jack Sparrow. Then, on the deck of the Black Pearl, we see the redhead emerge, and then we see her spun around before the reveal of Jack Sparrow himself, of course portrayed by Johnny Depp. Jack tries to kiss the redhead here, but the skull interrupts, but the two of them obviously don't care. Jack then says something that the audience can't hear, and the redhead then slaps Jack. The skull then says he probably had that coming, and after that, the redhead says, "I'm not that kind of girl," to which Jack replies, "All evidence to the contrary." And then the redhead slaps Jack again and storms off, and the skull says he definitely had that coming. But Jack then looks at the audience, and we start to get some great line delivery from Johnny Depp here as he says, "How do all these people get in my cave?" To which the skull tells Jack that they are his new crew. Jack then asks back, "Why would I need a new crew in my cave?" And the skull tells him for the battle. Jack then says, "Battle? What battle?" Right before a cannonball from the Flying Dutchman flies through the room and hits the Black Pearl, causing Jack to fall over. Jack then tells everyone to batten down the hatches, and he has another great line where he says, "I always wondered why they called it a Flying Dutchman. I don't get it." But the Flying Dutchman fires more cannonballs, which rip through the Pearl's sail and hit the Black Pearl again, which makes water pop up from the deck next to Jack. But Jack then pulls out his pistol and fires it at the Dutchman, but he misses and it ricochets all around the cave and eventually knocks his pistol right out of his hand. It's another great effect that I think is pulled off so well. Jack then says a funny line here where he says, "Some have said I am my own worst enemy." And after that, he has another great line where he says, "I'll see you to Davy Jones." Jones? And right after that, another cannonball hits the cave wall, and because of the projection, it actually makes it look like debris is falling from where it hit, which is really awesome. But Davy Jones then yells to fire at Will, and Jack says, "Will? Where are you, young William? Show yourself." Of course, Will does not appear in this attraction at all, but it is a funny little line. Jack then calls Davy Jones Scungili, just like he does in Dead Man's Chest, and he also proceeds to call him Captain Calamari, which is also incredibly funny. But Jack fires off the port side cannon and somehow sinks the Flying Dutchman with one singular shot. Afterward, the skull materializes in the sky and congratulates everyone. This is where we get one of Johnny's best line deliveries in the whole attraction, where he says, "Oh, we're back. Strange, inexplicably talking skull in the sky." The skull then says that guests turned out to be great pirates, and Jack tells the skull, "You trained them well, my floating and curiously littlest friend." Both of these lines usually got really great laughs from the audience, but we get one more incredible line from Jack Sparrow up next, and it's probably my favorite piece of dialogue from the whole show. Jack says, "Now, come back in 8 minutes and we'll do it all over again, eh?" I love this line. It is so hilarious, and it, of course, is referencing the fact that the show plays constantly over the course of the day. Shout out to Tim Landry, who was not only the visual effects lead on the attraction, but also wrote most of Jack's jokes. But the skull then asks Jack to recite the pirate's oath for his new crew, and Jack says, "It would be my honor to do the honors, which I will now do. Now, honorably." Jack then pulls out a long scroll, and he takes one look at it before sighing, and he just throws it over his shoulder, and instead, he says, "Right then, all who wants to be a pirate, say aye." And all the guests then yell back aye, and Jack says, "Perfect, congratulations, you're all pirates. Welcome to me humble crew." The skull then tells everyone to give themselves a round of applause, and Jack, along with the guests, clap together. Jack then begins to walk off, humming "Yo ho, a pirate's life for me," which then gives the skull the great idea to do a quick sing-along. I love how the skull says, "Join us for a round," and Jack says, "Don't mind if I do," and he pulls out a bottle of rum. The skull then says, "Not that kind of a round," and then they encourage everyone to sing along. Jack takes some swigs of his rum while everyone sings, and then begins to give commands to his new crew. He pulls out his compass and says his final line of the show, "We sail with the tide," before lightning strikes and he disappears. And then the skull has its final line, and it says, "For everyone to remember, this is the day you sailed with Captain Jack Sparrow." After that, everyone is ushered to the exit, and that is the end of the Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow attraction. So now that we've gone through the attraction, you can get the idea of what it was meant to be. It was an attraction that was geared towards kids to get them immersed in the world and have them participate by doing a bunch of little things. It wasn't anything crazy, but it was a fun little show with really incredible projection effects. And of course, the appearance of Jack Sparrow, actually played by Johnny Depp, was super cool. The attraction remained open until the end of 2014, where on October 24th, Disney announced that its final day of operation would be November 6th, 2014. After that, the attraction closed permanently. As for what took its place in Soundstage 4, well, actually, nothing did, as the space the building sat in at the park would later be used for the expansion of Toy Story Land, which was announced at the D23 Expo in 2015. Soundstage 4 was demolished in the construction and unfortunately no longer exists. So there is no real physical remnant of this attraction left at the park, or any of the attractions that were in the building prior to the Jack Sparrow attraction, which is a real shame. The area the building used to stand is now where the walkway into Toy Story Land is. I have a great photo of myself in front of the attraction, right under the skull and the signage, back when I went on it on one of my trips with my family, and it was so cool at the time, and I loved it. I only experienced the attraction once, but it has been ingrained in my memory since. I've never forgotten it, and I wanted to make this episode not only because it's something we haven't covered yet, but also to highlight the attraction that I feel is pretty forgotten about by most people. It was good for what it was, and I appreciated that. It wasn't trying to be something it wasn't. It wasn't a super popular e-ticket attraction like Tower of Terror or Rock and Roller Coaster. Obviously, it wouldn't have remained forever regardless. But I wanted to share my love for it and appreciate the attraction and the history behind it. This attraction was one of many things housed in Soundstage 4 at the park, and unfortunately, that building is completely gone now. All the behind-the-scenes exhibits for various films and this Pirates attraction rotated through that soundstage over the years, and it sucks that it's no longer standing. Just imagine now, when you walk into Toy Story Land, that you are actually in a dark cave, standing in front of the Black Pearl, watching Jack Sparrow up on the deck. And remember this awesome but forgotten Pirates of the Caribbean attraction that has left a lasting imprint on me and many others. I will always remember this attraction and how it really did showcase the legend of Captain Jack Sparrow. But that now brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you all for listening to this one, as I had a lot of fun researching this attraction and reliving my memories, watching videos of it again, and just being able to reminisce for a little while, so it was really fun. I know this was a bit of a shorter episode, but there wasn't that much to talk about. It was a shorter attraction. But let me know if you experienced this attraction back in the day, and if you have good memories of it as well. I would love to know. We aren't done with the theme park world just yet, as the next episode will be a deep dive through the various smaller Pirates attractions, entertainment, and shows that could be found at the Disney parks all around the world. It'll be a super fun episode, so stay tuned for that. Thank you if you've rated or reviewed the podcast wherever you listen, and thank you once again for listening and just being here. I'll see you next time. Take care. Podcast of the Caribbean is in no way affiliated with Disney. If you want to send me an email or a question, you can send it over to podcastofthecaribbean@gmail.com. You can also follow this podcast on Instagram and Threads at Podcast of the Caribbean, and over on Twitter/X and Bluesky at PodcastPOTC. I post fun content and trivia, so make sure to check those platforms out. And you can also buy merchandise for the podcast over on TeePublic and Dashery. Be sure to keep a weather eye on the horizon, and always remember, dead men tell no tales.